I think Cyprus really is quite unique within the Eurozone. There's no other country except Luxembourg that has such a huge banking sector relative to its economy. I mean, it's 8 times, the bank deposits are 8 times GDP. And such a large percentage of those are deposits from foreigners, about a third of them. There's just no other country where this kind of pattern would be applicable. So because they needed somebody to be bailed in, the Germany wasn't going to kick in the money without somebody local kicking in the money. They had to do this to make sure the distribution was equitable, that it wasn't just the Cyprus taxpayer picking up the tab for offshore bank holders. That's what they're discussing right now. I think they're going to raise the limit so people with 20,000 euros or less will not be affected at all. And by the way, please remember, although we talk about a tax or a levy, what this really is a debt for equity swap. People are getting shares in the banks in return for this money. So it's not that they're just losing their money. The taxpayer is going to be hit somehow. It seemed most equitable, I think, to distribute it to the depositors within the banks, and it seemed most equitable within that to hit the large depositors more than the small depositors. It's an imperfect decision, but it's an imperfect world, and given the alternative, which was to have 2 of the major banks collapse at a cost of 30 billion euros for the government immediately, which probably would have wiped out the whole banking system and all the deposits, I think it's a good deal. People would like not to have to pay anything, but given, I think, the political realities of Germany, where they're suffering from bailout fatigue. I mean, since the Berlin Wall fell, the poor German worker has just had to subsidize the Eastern Germans, and then they had these social changes, and then it's just been one thing after another. With an election coming up and the FDP in trouble electorally, in danger of falling below the 5% level that they need to get represented in the. I just don't think there was anything else that could have gotten through the German political process. But I remember back in 1998, I think it was, Hong Kong. The Hong Kong government started intervening in the stock market because hedge funds were selling stocks in order to affect the monetary system there. And the Hong Kong government just decided to defend itself. They started buying stocks. Everybody started yelling, oh, this is the end of the world. Hong Kong's no longer a free market. We can't trust the Hong Kong government. It's the end of capitalism in Hong Kong, blah, blah, blah. But, it was just a one-off. They haven't done it again, and it did stop the hedge funds from doing that. So I think this puts Cyprus back on a strong footing. I think assuming which I do, that it solves Cyprus's problems. You don't get the drip, drip, drip of package after restructuring. It's one and done. Cyprus is back on a stable growth path. Its debt to GDP ratio rises just to a little bit more than the EU average. It's sustainable, and they can get back to the business of growing their economy without wondering when the next shoe is going to drop. Well, initially it was horrible. Stocks fell, the euro fell, and gold rose a little bit. But I noticed the euro-dollar bounced up as people realized, hey, it's not reasonable to think that all the Spaniards are suddenly going to get on the plane to Frankfurt and open up a bank account in Frankfurt because they're worried about what might happen, or all the Greeks. I mean, that Cyprus is really unique, and while they haven't ruled out, well, some people have ruled out applying this anywhere else, the circumstances just don't fit Italy or Spain, and it's not reasonable to think that it's going to happen anytime soon. So I think the markets are, at least the euro dollar, is gradually coming back.